Monday, December 17th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, technology in education and why it's not going so well.
Let's do this.
Well, for perhaps the first time ever, the Visigoths came over and they didn't Visigoth the house so much.
Yeah, that was pretty good times, actually. You know, on one hand, there were fewer Visigoths, but on the other hand, the Visigoths that were missing were not the worst of the Visigoths. So it's hard to tell. Is it a matter of who comes that is the worst, the cause of the problem, or is it a matter of how many come? And I'm beginning to lean towards it's just how many come and not who.
Maybe it was just the fact that there was a blizzard and a bunch of them were stuck here, so they had to clean the house up before they left, or they would have looked extra Visigoth.
Yeah, we could have easily told who it was because, you know, some people stay here longer, you know, than we know which messes are made by who.
Also, possibly, and I realize this now, my character in our game almost died, and now he's kind of an invalid right now. Maybe they felt
it's
bad.
Awesome. Isn't Burning Wheel great? That shit never would have happened in D&D.
Well, think about that encounter. In D&D, all right, Burning Wheel, someone shot Gaius with an arrow. Now he's on the ground bleeding to death and permanently crippled because it went through his lung. D&D, I take 1d6 damage and keep going.
Yep. Oh, Burning Wheel. So awesome.
But, yeah, the one best thing beyond all that, the Visigoths left behind one vanilla cream soda with cane sugar in it. I'm drinking it right now.
Okay. I don't really care. All right, so...
Because you don't like the good things in life.
You mean the poison. All right, so...
A delicious creamy soda made with the finest Madagascan bourbon vanilla beans.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure.
This is the business.
No, it's not. It's mostly marketing.
I'm sorry that you cannot enjoy the wonders of sparkling water, cane sugar juice, and vanilla.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can only enjoy things that are real, and you know the label on something doesn't suddenly make me think it's so great.
It's not so much the label; it's the fact that it's sugar water with vanilla extract in it.
Yeah, you could just take sugar water with vanilla extract. You don't need to get fancy sparkling water. That's all bullshit, just made up.
Scott, sparkling water doesn't mean anything other than being carbonated. I can't easily carbonate things in my house.
Well, carbonating immediately makes things worse.
I'm sorry that your mouth, for whatever reason, can't handle carbonation.
Not even that. Carbon dioxide. Poison. Not good for you. Your body gets rid of it. Why would you put it in? It only goes out.
If it goes in the stomach, it doesn't hurt you.
Still, not good.
Why not?
Why?
What?
What's good about
Scott, it tastes really good.
Carbon dioxide doesn't taste like anything.
The sparklingness of it in a drink does.
No, it doesn't.
I submit that
What's the flavor of it then?
Scott, I submit that in a double-blind test, people could taste the difference between carbonated and non-carbonated anything.
Yeah, because they would feel it. It wasn't not a taste. If you had no taste buds, you could still taste the difference.
Smell is a large component, if not the primary component of taste. So I would argue that
carbon dioxide doesn't smell like anything.
So I would argue that
a person with no olfactory nerves and no tongue could tell the difference.
I would argue
it is a matter of feel.
I would argue that why limit the idea of taste to just one or two senses? Because
then
how many people do we know
feel.
like something or don't like something because of the texture? The texture is just feeling.
Yeah, I've never really understood those texture people. I mean, I guess the only thing where I don't like it because of the texture is like tentacles or something. Other than that, textures of foods really don't bother not bother me.
You do understand it because you just said you understand it.
Only the tentacles because they're too chewy.
So someone else might have that feeling about something else.
Yeah, they're stupid.
Okay.
Anyway.
So, Captain Tech News, what do you have in the tech news?
I don't know. We haven't talked about tech yet.
Shall I go first?
Let's try to talk about tech for the rest of the show. No,
all right.
I got it going.
I'll go first.
All right.
Because I got this here. I just read this article. But it's the funniest thing. I got this new job a while ago. And I actually do work at this job. Like, for real. And as a result, I don't just sit there surfing the internet for, one day out of the week. So I actually don't get to read the news until I get home usually.
Oh, man.
So I get home and I see an article. Student given detention for using Firefox.
Totally believable.
And I click on this, and it is in fact a piece of paper that has been scanned into the internet for us all to peruse. And I think the important part is incident description. Today in class, Big Black Bar, that's kind of a weird name, but had a program launched called Firefox or Foxfire.execute.
Oh, Foxfire.
I had told Big Black Box to close the program and to resume work, but he told me that it was just a different browser and that he was doing his work. I had given him 2 warnings, but he insisted that it was just a better browser and that he wasn't doing anything wrong. I then issued him detention.
Mm.
Yeah, Big Black Box shouldn't have been using that Foxfire program.
No, not at all. Well, what I can say about this is, first of all, you want to tell the rest of the story, or should
All
we-
right, so the rest of the story here. Because, all right, that's a Slashdot article, but you know how Slashdot is. It's not quite to the dig level of, every single headline being complete and utter bullshit. But at the same time, Slashdot has been known to redact or perhaps update a story a couple hours after it comes up.
something which Dig is incapable of doing.
Sure enough, why would they bother fixing the Ron Paul article that's obviously incorrect when they can just have another Ron Paul article?
Oh, good call.
So it's updated here. And one of these school officials was nice enough to contact us being Slashdot, and let us know that this is a hoax.
Oh.
If you were planning on calling the school, please refrain from doing so. Now, this is where it gets interesting. They know it's a hoax because the school said so. And I'm not going to read the school's claim that it's a hoax, but looking at it, basically, their claim doesn't really contradict what was in this detention letter. They say it was modified, but I kind of believe that the student was given a detention for something very similar to what was described in this letter.
Well, for me, basically the fact that the school said this, and it is something the school definitely said because it's on the school's website, right? So it is an actual, notice from the school. And basically, this specific incident of, detention for Firefox, I have no clue whether it's true or not or how much of it's true. It's completely uncertain. That doesn't matter. What does matter is that this sort of thing does happen because it was happening when I was in high school.
Now, we got to be careful here because that is a dangerous, slippery slope. That's an argument that can get you in a lot of trouble. I mean, remember a while ago when there was a noose hung outside of a firehouse somewhere and there's a big racism thing. Mm-hmm. And then it turned out later that was a hoax, that it was completely made up and that the person who was complaining had actually put the noose there himself.
Uh-huh.
And the people who had been so vocal about it, including this person, basically said, yeah, well, that one was a hoax, but, and then they just continued with their argument as though nothing had happened.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, you got to be careful there.
Right, but I don't need to be careful because when I was in high school, I got my anecdotal evidence here. When I was in high school, the school basically had a system where if you added any application to the system, any of the desktop computers in the school, or ran any EXEs that weren't on this list, someone who did something at the school would get an email about it, right? So this school probably has one of these stupid systems where someone runs an EXE, right? That is, because how else would the teacher know Firefox.exe?
Foxfire.exe?
Exactly.
How do we know it was Firefox?
I know, right? It could have been Foxfire, some other program. But anyway, this kid probably, downloaded Firefox, ran, the EXE, and the teacher, probably got a little notice on their computer that was someone is running an EXE that isn't one of the ones on their computer. Go punish them, So the teacher went over, and of course the teacher is incompetent and knows nothing about computers, just doing what the computer tells them to. And this student is being all not doing what the teacher says, so they must be bad.
Well, I would go one step further, and I think that it's a fairly more specific situation, because if you read what the school said, their statement about how the reports, blogs, and other sources on the internet indicating that Big String student was assigned detention for using Firefox instead of Internet Explorer are untrue and based on the fake letter. Detention is assigned in our schools after appropriate warnings are given. If students continue to engage in non-academic activities or fail to follow a teacher's directive during class time, discipline can and will be assigned. Now, I don't think we need another discipline reading, but I think what happened, the real story, my guess here, total guess, you can't libel me because I'm guessing, I don't know if this is true, well, slander, because it's not written down yet.
It's educated guess, though.
Yes, it is an educated guess, in my not-so-professional but completely opinionistic opinion.
But based on real-life experience.
But yet an opinion nonetheless.
Yep.
This kid, whoever he is, Big Black Box, was on the computer, and he knows how to use a computer. He's probably in a computer class or doing work in a class that involves computers. But like pretty much any kid in middle school or high school who is ever in a class with a computer teacher in a middle school or high school, the assignment was probably something completely stupid, and he was bored, so he just went to MySpace or something, and he happened to be using Firefox. So a teacher comes over and says, "You're not doing your work." Kid gives her guff. She gives him detention. And to make it all formal, he was running Firefox, an unauthorized application. And that's just the specific legalist rule that he broke. But really, he was just mouthing off and not doing his work.
I get the feeling it's more like one of these systems that tells the teachers when the kids are running something.
I'm almost certain that I am correct.
Because how
here.
else would this incompetent teacher know about Firefox? Seriously.
She probably got someone else in the school to write it up, or maybe the letter was altered a bit, and he was just trying to capitalize on the fact that it's Firefox because he knows that these Slashshot people freak out about it.
Maybe.
Because look, they make very clear that he was given this detention for not following the teacher's rules.
Right, now here's the thing, right? If you're not following a teacher's instructions, but you're right, and you show the teacher up, then you should be rewarded and the teacher should be punished. In fact, fired.
Now, the difference here is that it depends on if he's supposed to do an assignment, he's not doing it. I guess the teacher...
You have evidence that he did it? Innocent until proven guilty.
Well, one, that's not true in school. But
it should be.
Beside that...
Otherwise, the school's unjust.
If
it's a shitty school.
The teacher wouldn't be doing anything wrong if the teacher assigned work and the kid just refused to do it. No. Because they can grade him accordingly, punish him accordingly. It's all in the rules. That's all cool.
Yeah.
So much for your argument.
You can't Well, the only way you can punish a kid for not doing work is give him a bad grade.
No. Who says that? You can punish. You can have rules for. You could say anyone who doesn't do their homework gets detention.
That's bullshit.
But a lot of schools do that.
Well, that's bullshit. Those schools are shitty.
Okay. I think the greater issue here, since Scott seems to want to talk more about the instance of dealing with having teachers who are incompetent at using computers.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about.
If a teacher, I'm of the opinion that if a teacher in a public school in the U.S. is going to use a computer at all in their lectures, in their stuff, if they're going to let students use computers in the classroom, if they're not at least as competent as the students at computers, they should not be allowed to use computers in the classroom.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They're only going to lose the respect of the students and not be able to effectively teach pretty much immediately, and going to just completely discredit themselves as teachers as far as those kids are concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it would be imagine if some 8-year-old kid had to teach calculus to calculus professors. That's what it's like. The calculus professor is going to goof off and do calculus together, while the 8-year-old kid is like,
well, I do
no
remember.
one listens to me.
I was in middle school. And we had a computer lab, and it was mandatory. You had to take computer class every year in middle school. There was computer class 1, 2, and 3.
Yep, that's what we had also.
And I remember sitting down at computer class, and computer class basically involved the teacher giving you a printed out Word document or Works document or possibly a spreadsheet.
Yep.
And by the end of the class period, you had to duplicate that on the computer and then email it to him.
Yep.
And being smart, one, I could do it in 5 minutes.
I did in 30 seconds.
Well, usually they were really long, and I had to type a bunch of crap
Ours
in.
weren't so long, but what they would do is they make you do all sorts of different stuff. Like, it would be pretty short. Like, you had to bold this part and italics that part.
Now,
and
aside
then put
from
the
the fact
equation
that
in this
I feel, because from what I hear from kids, this sort of methodology in teaching about computers is still pretty much the predominant way of teaching computers in school.
It is.
I think that it is 100% ineffective and will do nothing but harm kids in the future. I think it's just an awful way to teach, and anyone who does that is not qualified to teach kids at all.
Nope.
But beside all that, being even smarter than just doing it quickly, I noticed that I could log into the computer locally instead of having to go through the net system.
Yep.
And if I got in locally, I could do some shenanigans and mount network drives. And that on those network drives were, in fact, the completed assignments and the assignments that he had made and printed and then saved in his own personal directory that was not in any way protected. And basically every day, I would just go to his directory, get the file, and then send it back to him. And I did this for 3 years.
Awesome.
And he'd always come over and say, he knew I was cheating. He was so sure that I was cheating because no one can type that fast. He didn't even see me typing that much. But he could never figure it out. And if he'd found me, he probably would have expelled me or something because the rules for messing with the computers were crazy at my
Yeah,
middle
the
school.
rules at the school, right, at my high school for like messing with the computers are crazy. It's like if you're messing with the computers, blah blah blah, hacking. Blah,
I was
blah,
caught.
blah.
Hacking one time.
Hacking. Basically, they had a desk. Basically, their security was they had some sort of Novell system on top of Windows, where if you logged in as a student account, there were no icons, and you couldn't open the start menu, and you couldn't go to start run. But if you pushed like F3, the find file dialog would show up. So you would search for like star.star, right? You'd right click on a folder and say explore. Explorer would show up, and you could explore every single directory and run any executable you could find and do anything you wanted.
I went one step beyond that. I just brought boot disks to school.
I could even run the Novell, the Novell administration program, and I could administer the school's network as a student account. The only security was that there was, no icon for it on the desktop or in the start menu.
I think the best thing was when one day I showed my English teacher how I could just look at all the grades anytime and change them if I wanted. There's no way she could know.
Yeah.
And she was like, "You're lucky I'm not incredibly stupid, or I probably would have expelled you and called the police." And then she told me to never show any other teacher that again and pretend we never had that conversation.
See, that's the thing, is that it's just so, we'll talk about it more later.
Yeah, well, I'll state my controversial thing because I'd love to have anyone argue this against me.
All right.
I'm of the opinion. Now, there is one allowance, and I think the allowance is purely for people who are already teaching. As in, people who are older, who started teaching before the modern era. And when I say the modern era at this point, I mean like the last 2 years, because the world in terms of technology and the internet has changed a lot in the last 2 years.
Yep.
I'm of the mind that going forward, anyone who is teaching children at all, anyone who's a teacher in a school, for primary education, secondary education, what have you, who is not computer proficient, as in basically computer proficient, able to do the things that people should be able to do on a computer, computer literate, should not be allowed to be a teacher because computer literacy is literacy.
I think I'm going to take it a step further. You ready? There's some of this sort of like this dogma, especially in Western schools, right? That it's sort of like you don't even question it because it's so basic. That the subjects are English, math, science, and social studies,
Reading,
history.
writing, arithmetic.
Exactly, and no one even thinks.
Dodgeball.
No one even thinks about changing that, right? It's not even. It's like a structure that's just accepted.
People do all the time. It depends on what kind of school you go to.
Yeah, I know, but I guess there are some crazy schools, that are pretty cool that do stuff that.
I mean,
differently.
I think that the general idea of teaching now in a lot of high schools and middle schools, there's English, and my school was lucky. We broke up language and literature separately, and most people have to take a foreign language. Then you have the sciences, and they pretty much break that up into physics, biology, chemistry.
Not until high school did they break them up.
Oh yeah, but even then, there's still science, and then there's social studies, and then later you get history, and they specialize in all that. And,
Yep.
And I think they do an okay job of that because we had computers. The only problem with having the technology was that, one, they were trying to teach computer literacy and technology separately, when really, I feel like every single subject in a school requires computer literacy. I mean, if you're in English, you should be typing everything on a computer.
Yep.
If you're writing things out by hand, something's wrong.
Pretty much, computers should be part of every class, but there should also be computer class where you learn how a computer works and, bits and bytes and how to write BASIC and all that stuff. And they should actually teach you that. They should have as much time in that class as you do in English class. It should be a full subject along with all the others, the fifth subject.
I wouldn't even say just computers. I would call it technological literacy.
Oh yeah, everything. You should learn how to solder circuit boards.
Of course, you know what? I'm also of the mind that kids in middle school and high school should take classes on how banking works, how loans work, how credit cards and the economy work.
Yeah, they definitely need, because in high school they told that there was one economics class and it did not teach you that stuff.
The only reason I knew about credit cards is because my parents got me one when I was 16 and they said how it worked.
Yeah, there really needs, see, that stuff should be part of home economics, but there.
You know what? Home economics for me was sitting in a room full of barely sentient fellow classmates, one of whom stuck needles in the teacher's food one day and yet was not expelled because they decided that he was special. And it wasn't like a special ed class. This was just normal, required home economics for everyone. And there were fights in the class all the time. I was kicked out of the class eventually because I was trying to get kicked out because I was kind of afraid of those kids. On a visceral, wow, they're trying to poison the teacher. I don't know what they're going to do to me.
Yeah.
But we learned how to cook, sausage, and I sewed together a cube, and that was the extent of it.
In my home economics class, the only ones I ever took were in middle school, and I cooked apple strawberry pie with some kids, and then I sewed some boxers, and then I sewed an alligator.
Jimmy Dean sausage, the same sausage I had cooked at home the day before. I cut it into slices, I put it on a frying pan, and then I sewed a cube and stuffed it with stuff.
Yep, I made an alligator. It's much cooler. All right, anyway. All right, let's move on to a different news here.
All right.
Okay, the story here is, did the NSA put a secret backdoor in the new encryption standard? Well,
now, I didn't read this article, so is the answer yes?
Well, maybe. Likely. Possibly. There's actually significant evidence, right? Basically, here's how it goes down, right? The NSA puts out a document, some crazy government thing that says, these are going to be the encryption standards, right? We're going to use this one and this one and this one and this one. And there's different ways. It's mostly random number generation is what we're talking about here. And there's many different ways of generating random numbers, right? So there's you can do it with, you could do one with hash functions to generate random numbers. You can do one with ciphers, right? And there's one that uses elliptic curves, right? And the one that does elliptic curves, the one that the NSA says to use, is dual_EC_DRBG, right? Now, the other ones are fine. They know all about the other random number generating things, and they know how they work, and they're cool. But this dual DRBG, whatever it is, I'll just call it the dual EC from now on, right? It's an elliptic curve random number generator. A well-understood technology here. And some guys studied it, and first of all, it's slower and shittier than other elliptic curve random number generators.
Awesome.
Okay, second of all, they've noticed a slight bias, right? Now, the slight bias doesn't really prove anything.
Well, yeah, because random number generation, to make truly random numbers, is effectively almost impossible.
Right. And this small bias isn't a big enough bias to make the algorithms, pointless. It's just a slight bias, and there's actually a workaround in the standard on how to avoid the issue. But it is a slight cause for concern, right? Anyway, the fact that there was a slight bias, makes the crazy encryption guys, the cryptographers, be like, whoa, we're staying clear away from that when we got this other one that doesn't have a slight bias, right? There's a whiff of a problem. We're going to stay clear, right? Now, here's the worst one. In the document that describes the standard, early on, there's some constants that you have to use. It's like, here's this constant and this other constant, right? But it doesn't tell you where these constants come from at all. It just, these are the constants, use them. Okay, we use those constants, right? Some guy proved mathematically that there are some set of secret numbers, all right? And if someone had these, because of these constants, right? He was able to prove mathematically if there's a set of secret numbers, and if you had the secret numbers, what you could do is you could collect 32 bytes of output from the random number generator, combine it with the secret numbers, and then you would know everything that the random number generator was going to do from there on out. All right? So if you have the secret numbers, this particular random number generating algorithm, you know what it's going to do, and it's totally broken and not secure in any way. The question is, so there is a backdoor into this random number generator. The question is, does the NSA have those numbers? Did anyone bother to figure out the numbers? Because it's ludicrously impossible to just figure them out. But whoever made the constants, the constants that are in the paper that are unexplained where those constants came from, if whoever made those constants, when they were doing the math to come up with those, could have easily also gotten the secret numbers.
Now, basically, I'm always of the mind that if ever I find out that encryption or anything that I use is compromised, I abandon it immediately unless there's no alternative.
Yep. Now, here's the thing, is that just now, recently, Microsoft Vista, Windows Vista, has added this algorithm as an option. They say it's not on by default, but you can turn it on if you want. And I don't know, there must be how-tos online, like how to turn it on or how to turn it off or whatever. But Yeah, basically, you do not want to be using this random number generator
No.
to make your keys or anything, your SSLs or anything. You basically don't want to use this random number generator at all for anything, even if it's not a matter of security.
Well, I have to read more before I form my... Because, I have opinions on things, but whenever, my, I guess, professional opinion, like as an IT professional, what is my opinion on this? But my hunch opinion is that this is, in fact, intentional, just because the odds of something like this just being so perfectly there,
Yeah.
that's kind of out there.
Yeah, basically, if you're smart, don't use this random number generator at all. Just completely ignore it. The problem is, this is like the government standard that's in, the National Institute of Standards and T, what's the T
Yeah,
stand
NIST, time.
Time,
'Cause
right.
I use them a lot.
Yeah. All right, this is their thing. They're like, these are the standard random number generators. Use these. And what the elliptic curve, the other ones they've, suggested are okay. But the elliptic curve one they suggest is shit. It's slow. It's insecure. It has a back door. Even if the NSA doesn't have the keys to the back door, there is a back door in it.
And someone will
And it
figure
has
it
a small
out.
bias. Eventually, I guess someone could figure it out. I don't know about that, but...
Yeah, well, processors getting better, and you can always throw the quantum computing will fuck everybody.
Yeah. Regardless, don't use this, don't enable it, and make sure that you're steer clear of the dual ECDRBG random number generator.
Things of the day. So, you realize that in Sweden they used to drive on the left-hand side of the road?
I didn't know. I was never actually aware of which side of the road Sweden drove on.
Well, from what I can read, it seems like the majority of people in the world drive on the right side of the road.
Yep, that's pretty correct.
And that very few places bother with this crazy driving on the left-hand side of the road business. And
well, Japan drives on the left, right?
And Britain.
And Britain.
But there's a lot of
Albion.
people, there's always, from what I hear, a lot of people are always advocating just switching.
Yeah.
And then
that way, it's easier on the car manufacturers. You only need to make cars with a wheel on one side.
But I was thinking about that, and then I suddenly realized, wait a minute, how the hell would you go about that?
I mean, if I had to suddenly drive on the left, that'd be pretty rough.
One, I would probably crash into something because, especially for someone like me where I drive so much.
Plus, I wouldn't go buy a switched car right away, so I'd be driving the left side of the road in my left-hand wheel car.
Well, I'm just thinking more along the lines of all my driving instincts. Because I drive so much that driving is like this subconscious thing. My brain would just go into the wrong lane and kill someone.
Probably, yeah.
I'd have to be thinking, like, turn
Plus,
left,
highway
turn right.
on-ramps totally broken suddenly.
Oh, yeah, especially in the U.S. where-
Even if, everyone went home in their driveways, and then everyone went back on the road driving on the left, the highways wouldn't work. You couldn't get on and off. It'd be backwards.
Yeah, that's one thing. I know we have a lot of non-U.S. listeners, and I know there are freeways in the rest of the world, but I don't think you quite understand the extent to which our freeways are freeways here.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, but but anyway, and then I really started thinking about this, and then I started looking online to see if it's ever happened before, and sure enough, Dagon H, a.k.a. the H-Day. Not D-Day. We had D-Day, and I guess F-Day and G-Day, but then H-Day.
Really? So some place actually
The
tried...
H stands for Höger traffic, which is the Swedish word for right-hand traffic. So this day was on September 3rd, 1967.
That was a long time ago.
And basically, from what I can gather, Sweden drove on the left, which was dumb because every one of their neighbors drove on the right. And
So what did you do at the border before Dagon H?
At the border, you swapped.
Oh, wow, that sucks.
And also, most people in Sweden had cars with the wheel on the left side because right-hand wheel cars are not that common.
Huh.
So it was pretty much just stupid that Sweden was driving on the left, and Sweden realized that. And for a long time, they were
Yeah,
thinking...
it must have caused a lot of trouble, too. Not just with Swedish people going to other countries and having to switch at the border, but people from, Norway come into Sweden, crash because they have to switch on the wrong side of the road. They're not used to it.
So this is the story, and it's on Wikipedia. You can read it, of exactly how they pulled this business off. And basically...
Everyone go home, then everyone can drive again.
They've been thinking about it for 40 years.
40 years.
For 40 years, this idea had been voted down, and people kept voting to keep driving on the left. And then in 1963, 4 years before they did it, they said, all right, we're going to do it. And they established the Statens Höger Traffic Commission. which was, if you remember, Hoger Traffic. It was the Hoger Traffic Commission. And it was basically the government entity that was going to oversee the change.
You pretty much need to make a whole new government entity to do something like that.
Now,
as long as you remember, which the U.S. never remembers to do, to remove the government entity when it's done.
Now, it was a 4-year effort, not so much in terms of fixing the infrastructure, but 4 years of doing psychology and advertising to remind people that this was going to happen. And then
we should do some of that for our, turning off the broadcast TV.
So as the day neared, apparently, every single intersection in Sweden was given an extra set of poles with an extra set of traffic signals wrapped in plastic. So they basically built an entire parallel network of traffic signals everywhere. And they put a parallel set of lines were painted onto every single road with white paint and then covered with black tape. Because previously they used these yellow lines, so they're switching to white lines too. So basically they built an entire parallel infrastructure. And then on Sunday, December 3rd,
they took all the tape off and took all the plastic off.
All non-essential traffic was banned from the roads for 5 hours from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m.
Exactly. So only ambulances and fire engines and whatnot?
Yep, and any vehicle on the roads had to follow special rules. And then at 4:45 a.m.
So most people stayed home because they were worried about dying.
Well, who was going to be on the road that early anyway?
I know, right?
So at 4:45, every single vehicle on the road had to come to a complete stop and wait 5 minutes. Then, carefully and slowly, everyone switched sides, and then at 5 o'clock, traffic is allowed to proceed.
So wait, when did like people all around the country run around tearing tape and plastic off things?
Yes.
Like whose job was that? Did they actually?
The government.
They had government people everywhere.
Yes. Also, probably the best thing.
How did they have so many government people everywhere?
Because Sweden is smart about that sort of thing. 1, socialism.
Oh, right.
2, it's something that why can't the U.S. do it? We have so much money, so much power.
We don't need to switch to the left side of the road.
How come when the U.S. wants to do something, we don't just do what Sweden did, which is get a bunch of smart people, pay what it costs to do it right, and do it.
Because they're stupid.
Yeah,
and people
like
don't like change.
And just read the rest of the story. It's kind of crazy, but my favorite thing in this Wikipedia article, there's a picture of Stockholm shortly before traffic resumed, and it's utter chaos.
Awesome.
It's utter chaos. It's just cars just kind of pointed in different directions.
It's fixed now, right? So how long did it take before it was all good?
I don't know.
Because, now they're driving on the right, and everything's cool, right?
Actually, there were fewer traffic accidents that day than any other day.
Well, because everyone's going all carefully. There weren't accidents, but people were probably all like, whoa.
They also lowered the speed limit for like months after it, just until people got used to it and everyone was driving.
I would probably obey a
careful.
lower speed limit if something like that recently
you know how
happened.
slow I'd be driving for like a year after something like that happened?
Yeah, probably.
But
I'd be like, every intersection I'd be thinking real hard, like, okay, no right turn on red, left turn on red, and wait for the right turn signal.
I do have to point out that in a nation like the United States, I believe that doing something like this today would be effectively impossible.
Yeah, the U.S. is too big.
It's not just that it's too big, it's that our infrastructure is for cars is so advanced and so specialized. Now, advanced is relative because it's advanced in some places.
It's advanced, it's special.
Well,
it's special.
Our freeway network, modern freeways in the U.S., like the ones that are engineered well, or even like in the Midwest, most of the Midwest, and even the major ones in, New York area that don't go through New York City, are marvels of engineering. And even the ones that are totally screwed up, like I-95 near New York City, or I-287 near New York City, or or any of the. That's just a matter of there's too many people on the road. The fact remains that they're still marvels of engineering, and the fact that they work at all is kind of crazy. But they're so specialized for the way traffic goes that you'd basically have to rebuild every freaking goddamn on-ramp in this country over the course of 20 or 30 years.
Yep.
So yeah.
Okay.
This is pretty cool.
All right. You like Star Wars toys, Rim?
When I was a kid, and I liked Star Wars, but there weren't Star Wars toys, except for the old ones that were valuable, I wanted nothing more than Star Wars toys.
Really? See, when I was a kid, I kind of knew what Star Wars was, but I didn't really get into it. I got into it a little bit later than everyone else. All the other kids were kindergarten, first grade. They were Star Warsing it up. I wasn't Star Warsing it till a few years after that. So.
I don't know when it was, but one day my dad sat me down and showed me Star Wars, and I was in awe.
So, like, my friends had Star Wars toys, but I didn't, and I didn't really care because I didn't really understand. Like, I could recognize C-3PO, but I didn't know what his name was. I just knew that was the gold Star Wars robot and stuff like that, I knew that there were lightsabers and Darth Vader, but that was it. I guess I knew what I knew from Muppet Babies, right? So, Star Wars toys, I didn't have so many. And, if you go to buy a Star Wars toy now, they make a Star Wars toy out of everything. I mean, even if they're not making it right now, it fucking exists. They got, like, any pose, any character, even the most minor character, there's a Star Wars toy for it. Every single dude, like, background guy number 5, yup, he's got a figure, So, there are, though, a few things that they have not made Star Wars toys out of. And this website has pictures of them. Let me tell you a few of them. You ready? First of all, there is no Star Wars toy for the planet Alderaan. But here's a picture of one. It's just a bunch of rocks in a box.
Oh, I don't know. That one's good, but I think the Uncle Owen action figure is probably the best.
Well, it's not just the Uncle Owen action figure, because I'm sure one of those does exist. It's
It's
smoldering Uncle Owen corpse and smoldering Aunt Beru corpse action figures.
Oh.
They are not included in the smoldering Moisture Farm playset. They are sold separately. Yeah, there's also the dead Ewok toy and the Force. Actually, that's all of them that's on this website. The Force is just an empty box.
The only problem with this thing of the day is that there aren't enough.
Yeah, they should have made it something awful, or perhaps some sort of Photoshop Friday worth 1,000, like Star Wars toys that don't exist.
Maybe someone should do that.
Maybe so. I want to see here. People come to our forum and show us the Star Wars toys that do not exist.
Yeah, let's see what your Photoshop skills are.
Let's see if we can think of one right now.
So much for that.
Ooh, I know. Just a toy that's just the hole on the Death Star they have to shoot into. Just the hole.
I think you're forgetting something very important. The Sarlacc.
I think there might be a Sarlacc toy. Let me go
I don't
look.
know. I don't know if there is a Sarlacc toy.
I'm looking it up right
If there
now.
isn't, there should be.
What? Hold on. Okay, there is a Boba Fett Unleashed toy that has the tentacles of the Sarlacc grabbing Boba Fett by the leg.
But it isn't a Sarlacc with a digestive pit.
It's a part of a Sarlacc that is and a Boba Fett statue on top.
Huh.
Yeah, so it's close. It's quite a bit of Sarlacc there, but that's all. So yeah, there's a Star Wars toy of everything.
Right, so I guess we can just pick right off where we left off from my news earlier in the show.
Yeah, basically, let's start off with a more general view here. Let's zoom out a bit, right?
So there's this planet.
We have this country, or at least this, many countries in the world, I assume, are having a similar problem.
Wait, are we doing the global statement, and then we're going to narrow our focus, and then have a thesis statement?
Maybe.
I'm proud.
Okay. Where knowledge about technology and computers and electronics, is becoming more and more essential. We've said it before on the show that
How many times have I said the exact words, computer literacy is literacy?
Yes. Right? If you are alive today and you are not literate in the language of your nation, or the language most used near you, if you cannot read and write, your life is severely limited, and you cannot progress in society, and many options are unavailable to you unless you become literate. And in today's world, if you are not technology literate, it is going to hurt you almost as bad as if you are not literate in language, and as time goes on, that problem will only get worse.
I mean, you might say, well, it isn't right this second, but it's getting there. I mean, think about how important computers and the internet got in the last 5 years, the last 10 years, the last 20 years. They're going to change more in the next 2 years than they did in the last 10.
I mean, right now, if you can't read and write or do simple math, you can barely even get a job at McDonald's.
You're basically relegated to hard manual labor.
You could be a janitor, maybe.
No, because janitors have to be able to at least read the cleaning stuff. They got to know how to...
That's true.
I mean, yeah.
So, think about that, right? The janitor, if you can't read, he might put out the slippery floor sign when it's the door closed sign or something.
Well, I think the multiple languages plus the nice picture of a guy being killed
I
in
know,
a door.
that does help. But
I'm more worried about that, mixing, let's say, one kind of cleaner and another kind of cleaner.
Right, so as time goes on, I'd say in the next decade or two, it's going to get to the point where if you are not computer literate, you can't even work at McDonald's because everything will be computerized at McDonald's, where, if everything eventually is going to be computer controlled, every job is just going to be controlling the computers or telling the computers what to do.
Or not even that, but it's getting to the point even now where all basic jobs, I mean, your job is X. Like, say my job is PR, right? Well, I have to use a computer to email all my contacts because the business world runs on email now, not on much else. And I have to be able to use a computer to design my PR press releases. And then I have to use a computer to go on the internet, know where to send these press releases, to check the internet buzz. You can't be a PR person and not know about the internet and not be able to use computers effectively.
You think about a business a long time ago. Let's say, and nowadays businesses sort of have two parts. They have, if they're a manufacturing business where they make stuff, right? They have a building where they make stuff, and they have a building where they do business. And the buildings where they do business are just desks with computers on them, and that's it. And back in the day, if you went to a place of business, you might see like the accountants have one kind of desk with, sort of, adding machines and slide rules or whatever, abacuses. And the other people have desks where they have lots of files and folders, and everyone sort of has, their desk is different. Everyone has to learn to use different tools for their specific job and learn different things. Nowadays, everyone is a desk with a computer. You can't really do much if you don't know how to use the computer. Even in the factory, you go into the factory, there's a big machine that makes things with a computer next to it that controls the machine.
Yep, I mean, even when I worked at IBM, even the low, like the menial jobs in the factory, like the ones where basically you would go to a machine and pick up a whole bunch of things and carry them to another machine, put them back in. Then you had to sit at a computer and do a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And if you couldn't do that stuff, well, you didn't end up working there that long. And that wasn't the most glamorous job. It was pretty much the lowest man on the totem pole. You were paid less than the janitor.
Yeah, you're the guy who puts things in the machine. Puts
things in the dumb machine, because there were smarter machines where you had to know how to put stuff in it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's basically the most unskilled, least knowledge required job you can get in the United States is put things in the dumb machine, right? And you still need to have computer literacy for that even now to some level. And the thing is most people in this country, especially people who are older than us, right? It's pretty much like we're pretty close to the line. It's like people more than, say, 10 years older than us are that's sort of where the line is.
Well, hey, I want to feel
of course, there are many older people who have learned.
I think I can put this pretty succinctly, because we're not talking about, like, right this second in terms of, it's not like if you're 40 and you're working in the industry and you're not super computer proficient that you're done and you're screwed, because you're probably going to make it till retirement just fine. The problem is that people, and it's not just older people, a lot of people in this country, and I think a lot of the problem also has to do with how these things are taught, but we'll get to that because I think we mentioned earlier in the show. It's that they separate using technology from doing other jobs. Like they'll teach the skill X, and then independent of that, they teach skill computer, when really skill computer is a part of skill X. Like, they try to remove the computer from the English, or they try to remove the computer from the math, remove the computer from the science.
Some schools try to do that thing where everyone gets a laptop and they try to use technology in everything.
That's a great idea. Let's not talk about the failings of why that doesn't work, but
I was going to talk about the failings of why that doesn't work.
But in principle, it should be that way. Computers should be used in pretty much every aspect of education.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could see, like, if you're going to have an impromptu test, I could see, writing things by hand. And we're not saying you must type everything, you must use the computer, blah. What we're saying is computers are not a separate skill anymore. The separate skill of computer is IT and CS and coding, and when the computer itself is your job. But a lot of people seem to think that if the computer itself is not your job, then you don't need to know about the computer. And that's completely false.
Yeah, it's not like a car where you don't have to know how the mechanism of internal combustion, but you can still drive.
It might someday get to that point with
Maybe.
AI and such, but not in the next couple generations.
Nope. At least we're well beyond the point of DOS where you had to, use a command line. Now it's a lot easier now. You're better off, but you still have to learn a lot to be able to use a computer.
Yep, so you don't have to be like us. You don't have to be a computer professional unless your job is to be a computer professional.
Which it might well be.
But you have to be able to use a computer to do
You have to be able
things.
to use a computer without having to have, the sysadmin yell at you.
So, how come, now, there might be a lot of reasons for it, but how come, at least in my experience, I have never met a middle school or high school computer teacher who knew one good goddamn about computers.
Well, here's part of it. In my high school...
I've met a couple online. I'll say that.
Well, in my high school, in my schools, they didn't actually have computer teachers, right? It was that some teachers knew more about computers than others, and some of them were actually good at using them, But, for example, in my high school, there were a bunch of computer classes you could take. But pretty much all of them were like in the business school, like and they were all how to use Word, how to use, Excel, how to use whatever, taught by business teachers. And they would mostly teach business or, like when I took how to type, it was mostly like how to format a letter and how to type on these old, that was the one class that used incredibly old computers, was the how to type class, because they had the old clackety XT keyboards. It was good stuff. But the only other computer class was a computer science class, which is Visual Basic, taught by a math teacher who read a book on Visual Basic. The math teacher, not a computer teacher. And the reason is, first of all, schools, people talk about schools not having enough money. I'm not going to talk about that now. But I think, I'll just say that I think schools have plenty of money and they just spend it stupidly.
Well, I think it's much more complex than that, because there are schools that have plenty of money and spend it stupidly. There are schools that spend their money smartly, they just don't have enough money.
Yep, there's all kinds. But
to defray and just dilute all the flames we might get, you can't apply a blanket solution to the school funding problem in the United States, because every school, every state, every town is completely different.
But I just want to say that there's a lot of people who are like, money is the solution to all school problems.
Well, you know what? It's not school. There are a lot of people who say money is the problem to, or the solution to, all problems.
Yes.
And a lot of government agencies in the U.S. like to just throw money at a problem, and usually that just makes the problem bigger, and now I have less money.
Yep. But anyway, the thing is that anyone, in order to actually have a good computer education, you're going to need someone at the school, at least one person who actually knows about freaking computers. Like, actually knows, like, as much as we do, or almost as much as we do. Someone knowledgeable who really knows, like, how a CPU works, at least basically, and these kinds of things. How else can they teach them if they don't know, right? Your teacher must know more than the student, or else it doesn't work, right? So the problem is anyone who actually knows that amount of stuff can go and get a job and make $1 zillion, because there aren't enough of those people. I
mean, I'll be honest, I really want to be. My dream job for a long time was to just be a high school computer teacher.
That was also my dream job. Summers off, don't have to work the whole day, work in the town in which you live, very short commute, really good benefits. You get to work with cool kids, and I like teaching kids and telling them what's up. I mean, I do a podcast where I tell people how computers work. How awesome would it be if I sat there for, 7 hours a day, or I guess not 7 hours, but many hours a day, telling high school kids how to do a computer thing.
So, I applied to a bunch of teaching jobs, and, I was willing to get my master's and be a teacher as long as I could teach computer classes. And I was even willing to stay after school and run computer clubs and anything computer they wanted, and be the head IT guy for their school if they wanted, because I could do that.
Yep.
But pretty much every non-teaching job I looked into paid 2 to 4 times more than the best paying teaching job I saw.
Yeah, even if I was like head computer guy for a school district, it paid a pittance. A pittance compared to what I make at my sort of average coding job.
The other problem is, it seems like it's pretty much impossible for someone who knows about computers and is a computer professional to just become a computer teacher, because schools don't want a computer teacher. They want a teacher, and they want them to teach a bunch of things, especially in like American public high schools. So they couldn't just get someone like me to teach a computer class. They'd have to get me to get my master's. They'd probably make me teach a math class or something stupid too.
They'd make you teach like physics, and then you teach like one computer class a day.
And also, I think even a bigger problem than that, schools pretty much, with rare exceptions, I mean, actually my old high school offers a lot of really good computer classes, but that's because they are, shall we say, awash in the money that comes from being one of the wealthiest suburbs in the country.
Even places awash in money, they try to run good computer classes and they fail. So
well, that school does. They teach the kids C really well, and a lot of
who's teaching it though.
It's a special case. There aren't many schools like that.
Yeah,
I could do a whole show on my high school.
Yeah, whatever.
Because I think it was a pretty good high school. I think they did things right.
My high school was okay.
Yeah,
wasn't the best, wasn't the worst, just kind of good enough.
But it seems like a lot of schools aren't willing to put computer literacy as high up. I mean, they say like, oh, well, math is important and science is important and all those things are important, and they are. But basic computer literacy is just as important, if not more so, because it doesn't matter if you're good at math and good at science and good at all these other things. In the next decade or two, if you're not also competent at computers, you're worthless.
Yeah. Also, maybe I just thought of this just now. Maybe some of it has to do with the no standardized, the standardized testing, because it's like all these schools seem to care about is their test scores and blah 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 blah.
Well, part of that also has to do with the fact that, the big problem, again, of how to distribute money to schools, and every now and then people get the misguided idea that why don't we reward schools who have better students by giving them more money, or why don't we reward schools that get more kids to pass, and then schools either lower their standards so more kids pass, or teach to whatever test they're using to determine how good the school district is, or in a lot of cases, cheat outright.
Yeah, teachers just say, we'll get more money if the kids do better. Well, let's make all their grades go up. We'll get more money if the kids do worse. We'll make all their grades go down. It's like...
Yeah, but let's not get off on the tangents of schools, because I want to get specifically on technology.
Yep.
Let's suffice to say, boil it down, core issue.
Core issue is that schools don't know how to teach technology. They don't have an incentive to teach technology. And as a result, I think the U.S. especially, or at least I don't know how it's going in other countries, I think we're going to fall behind the rest of the world because we're going to have a generation of people who don't know enough about technology, who won't be able to do anything unless they know about technology. And there are some other places in the world, maybe like South Korea and such, who are going to pull ahead of us and make a bunch of awesome things, and we're not going to make awesome things because their people, their labor force, knows how to use computers and ours doesn't.
So specifically why? I mean, I think there, on one hand, one really important issue here is that, like I said before, they always separate the technology from the rest of the classes. So there's the computer class, and then there's the English class, and they don't use computers in the English class. But beyond that, a lot of schools try to integrate. Like they say, we're going to integrate computers everywhere, as it should be. Computers are going to be used.
We're going to use technology in all the classrooms. Everything's going to be all teched up. And they buy all sorts of things, and they put technology in every classroom of some sort.
Now, even if the school has the rare, competent computer teacher or the good computer teaching department in the high school, that's great. So the computer classes are good. But now, kids are in an English class, and that English teacher doesn't know jack all about computers, and they use the technology inefficiently and incorrectly, and it's worse than just, using it inefficiently. But like I said earlier in the news part, when a kid is in school and a teacher is trying to teach them something, and the kid actually does know more than the teacher, the kid's not going to listen to that teacher ever again. They've lost all respect for that person as an educator.
I can't tell you how many times, especially in high school, but also middle school, right? Some teacher would have some sort of technology in the classroom that they were supposed to use to teach us with, right? Or like a graphing calculator, or some sort of, overhead graphing calculator.
Oh, graphing
thing.
calculators were the worst. They didn't know how those worked
right?
at all.
Or some sort of, computer display, or some sort of magical chalkboard, right? And it's like the teachers would just have sort of like this instruction, like this sort of like manual, like here is how to use this technology to teach the students, right? And they would just do what the manual said, and if it even worked at all. And I'd be sitting there and I'd be like, I know how all this shit works, and you're doing this in a stupid way, and you don't actually understand how this technology works, and the teacher needs to have an understanding of how the technology works, not just following directions, but actually needs to know how it works
now, again,
in order to be able to use it as an effective teaching tool. Even if they really know how to teach really well, if they have a tool that has the potential to help teach, and they don't know how to use the tool, there's no even point in using it.
Now remember, they don't have to be a computer scientist. They don't have to be able to write the program. They don't have to be able to set up the network. They just have to be able to use the tool. And the fact that I think the majority of educators in the United States cannot even use the tool is the biggest problem in education today, discounting money problems in poor districts.
Yeah, it's like, some teacher might have, say, like a magical, chalkboard that's all digital, right? And there could be there's a lot of cool things you could do with a digital chalkboard to teach better, right? Many things. You could get some videos up on there and pictures and move them around. And I could think of a million things right now, a way in which a digital chalkboard that's just like a giant LCD screen or something would could be used even by like a math teacher to to teach the students better and have them understand math better than they do with a regular chalkboard.
This is why money often doesn't solve the problem. Because look, poor school can't afford even textbooks, so they're screwed already. Mm-hmm. Rich school can afford everything they want. So they spend the money on, the big technology. We're going to get the smart classrooms. And then none of the teachers know how to use it.
And when the school comes to get inspected, they go, look, we have all this cool technology. Look how cool we are. We're the best school. We have technology, and the teachers are using it to teach students.
And meanwhile, I as a kid, I sit there at the computer, and I've already broken out and I'm on the internet or like chatting on Prodigy or something and playing some games I installed, while the teacher is laboriously trying to explain how to make something bold in Microsoft Word.
Yep. I mean, think about it. You give the teacher the digital chalkboard, right? There's a potential there to really have an amazing teaching experience, better than with the regular chalkboard. But what's really going to happen, that teacher who doesn't know how to use it, doesn't know how to use the tool properly, is actually going to do a worse job of teaching than if they had the plain old chalkboard, because they're only going to be able to do things with that, because they only know to do things with it, that they would do with the normal chalkboard. So they're not actually creating a better teaching experience. They're just using the technology because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to use technology in the classroom. But they're going to do it worse because they don't know how to use technology.
Sadly, it's not just technology, because I can think of a lot of instances when I was in middle school, especially, where it was just I'd be in a class and the teacher would be wrong, outright, obviously wrong, and yet to point that out was often cause for disciplinary action.
Yep.
I mean, I think one of my favorite moments ever in middle school is this teacher was teaching us how to like plot. It was a social studies teacher, nonetheless, but she's teaching us how to like plot data and analyze like a graph.
It should be a math teacher, actually.
Yeah, but she's doing it, and I can see the point because I'm really a big advocate of cross curriculum.
Oh, definitely.
Because we said, if you split the technology from the other things, then it's kind of like how a lot of people, especially older people, have trouble with computers, because even though they could solve the problem on their own if they applied just their rational intelligence, which they have, to the problem, people compartmentalize things and they don't realize that they can use their life skills in areas they might not have expected. They can fork it in, a field of related knowledge.
Yep.
I mean, you might be 70 and you don't know jack all about computers, but if you use the computer and it breaks and you read what's on the screen and you're smart, you can figure out how to make it go. But a lot of people run into a computer problem and they say, oh, it's a computer. I don't know. It's in the computer
People don't even
department."
read what it says on the screen. That's why you say, what was the error message? I don't know. Did you read it?
It's
No.
not just with technology. People compartmentalize, partly I think because of the way education is in the U.S., and as a result, they don't have this ability to fuse knowledge together and, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts kind of deal.
Yep.
But this teacher is teaching this wrong, like outright wrong. It is just pathetically incorrect what she has said. And I raise my hand and basically say, you're doing it wrong. That's not how you do it. And she says, no, I'm doing it right. What do you know? I'm the teacher. And I said, you're doing it wrong. Do you want me to go get the math teacher and prove it? And then she freaked out.
Yep.
And the freaking out culminated in, well, if you're so smart, why don't you teach the class? And she like stood up there and she's like, she folded her arms and she gives me this look of, how do you like it? Now the spotlight's on you. And I get up and I walk to the front of the room and I take the chalk and I take the thing and I taught the class.
Yep.
And then I was recommended for detention.
Yep. See, I read a story online. Don't know how true it is because it was a story online. But the story was that there was some high school class. I think it was a science class. And on the first day of this class, the kids went in, and the teacher taught them all about this animal. I forget the name of the animal, but the teacher...
The Jabberwocky?
No, maybe not the Jabberwocky, but some other animal, right? And the teacher taught everyone about this animal and told them there was going to be a quiz the next day, all right? So the kids are all taking notes about this animal the teacher's teaching them about. And, and the next day, they come in and they get a quiz. Right? Or I think he gave him the quiz at the end of the class or something. I don't remember. Regardless, he taught him about an animal. He gave him a quiz on the animal. This is the first thing they do in this guy's class, right? He gives them back the quiz and everyone got all Fs, right? And those Fs fucking counted. And basically, everything the teacher told him was a lie on purpose. Told him about a fake animal, made up a bunch of bullshit that was totally believable. And he said it was all wrong. I totally lied to you, so you got all the questions wrong because you answered what I told you. And those students went on. First of all, they loved that class, and that teacher was awesome, and every teacher needs to be like that, and any teacher less than that shouldn't be a teacher. But the problem is there aren't enough people like that because there's not enough people taught
Scott,
by those.
There aren't even enough people who know how to make a USB
They should just
stick
have
work.
that guy teach the entire country over the internet. That's what they should do.
I've had a couple teachers like that, so I can definitely...
Yeah, there were a few. There are always a few in every school, but there's never enough. And those students would go into the other classes and always be questioning the teachers just like he taught them to, and they'd often be telling other teachers they were wrong, and the other teachers didn't like that guy so much, but he was a good teacher and the rest of them were shitty teachers, and the kids that were in his class turned out awesome.
Well, I remember the one time my little brother was...
If it was a true story, because it was a story
This
on the
is a
internet.
true story. I think I told it on the show before, but it bears repeating. I'll be brief. My little brother's in like elementary school, and the textbook has a typo. It switched AM and PM when talking about time, like noon and midnight. So it was wrong in the textbook. It was opposite. The teacher teaches this. My little brother, raises his hand, little elementary school's kid, and says, "Oh, you're wrong. 12 p.m., 12 a.m. is like this." And the teacher basically says, you don't know anything. You're just some kid. I'm the teacher. I'm right. And then proceeds to teach what the textbook said, which was wrong. Now, this isn't like some esoteric thing. 12 a.m., 12 p.m., noon, midnight. Good God. So she then, my brother says, "Well, you're wrong," and he won't let it drop. So she basically ridicules him in front of the class for like 10 minutes about how dare he, look at him. He's dumb. He doesn't know anything, and yet he's trying to, show me up. He's trying to ruin your education and get in the way of you all being taught because he thinks he knows better than me, the teacher. So he comes home in tears. Little kid, obviously, and tells my mom.
Oh no!
So
that's how you can tell if you have a good mom, because a bad mom goes, shut up, and a good mom goes and smacks teachers around.
You know what it's like in Donnie Darko when his parents get called into the school and they, the counselor is telling his parents what he did, and instead of being angry, they're just laughing like, "That's so great!
Yep,
I can't believe he did that." That's how it should. But the righteous fury. Now, it gets better. My mom goes into the school, right? And, she goes to talk to this teacher, and she tries to explain. And the teacher basically says, "Yeah, well, your kid was wrong, so I corrected him, and he made a fit." So my mom says, "You know that 12 p.m. is noon and 12 a.m. is midnight, right?" So she pulls out the textbook and shows it to my mom and says, "See?" So
obviously, this teacher was taught by someone that the teacher in the textbook is always right.
Well, she had tenure.
And not to question authority. Yeah, tenure problem.
Yeah, she had tenure.
I don't think that tenure should exist. I think the teacher should be fired immediately.
So, my mom goes and just walks out, finds another teacher. And the teacher's like, it's that teacher? Oh, I'm coming for this.
Oh.
And
they must have hated this teacher.
And the teacher's like, "See? Blah, blah." And the guy looks at the book and says, "Well, yeah, there's a typo in the book." And then he walks out of the room. And, yeah. That was the school district we eventually sued, so.
Yeah, but
threatened to sue.
There's just a general problem of how can we, I think the fundamental problem here, because we talked about the technology aspect, I guess, as much as we could, but the fundamental problem seems to be, how can people educate our children when they themselves, or at least not all of them, but enough of them, are not educated enough themselves? Like, they don't even know everything that they're teaching. What do we do about that?
And more specifically...
And you can't just rely on textbooks and things like that, because obviously they're not always right.
Plus, just to get back to the technology thing, too, I am of the feeling, seriously, that within 10, 15, 20 years at most... you are not qualified to teach at all if you are not basically proficient in computers.
You're not qualified to work at McDonald's.
All right. I'm hungry. I think that's the end of that.
Yeah.
Stay tuned tomorrow. I'm not sure what we'll talk about yet.
I have no
Video
clue.
game day.
No clue at all.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.